Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Kansas City Profiles presented by Easton Roofing. Our guest today is Julie Overlease of Kansas City. She is a first-time author and she has an unbelievable true story to tell. Her book, Hope Upon Impact, a miraculous true story of faith, love, and God's goodness, was published last month. And, of course, it is available in all the regular ways you can at Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble, and just Google Hope Upon Impact. In early 2018, a backyard tree cracked and a heavy limb fell. 12-year-old Evelyn Overlease suffered a devastating blow to her head as she shielded her puppy. A significant compressed skull fracture required emergency neurosurgery. And this book details Evelyn's accident, medical care, and recovery, and it's really kind of crazier than fiction. In the end, it's a book of hope and miracles in which Evelyn's mother tells a story of faith in action during a time of crisis, of prayer through pain and darkness, of devoted friendship, and the great goodness and the love of God. Julie Overlease is a delightful person to talk to. For a first-time author, she did a remarkable job with this book, Hope Upon Impact, and it'll be a pleasure for you to hear our conversation, which comes your way next. It's Julie Overlease and Hope Upon Impact, a miraculous true story of faith, love, and God's goodness, and it comes your way next on Kansas City Profiles, presented by Easton Roofing. We're here with Joe Spiker, the CEO and president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you had a great year in 2019, a record year. 2020 comes, things are moving smoothly along, and then the coronavirus comes. But your company seemed to be very ready, very proactive, and very ready to serve your customers well.
Yeah, we adopted social distancing very early before the cities even put out the notices. And we started working from home. We are largely cloud-based as a company, so that transition was easy. Our technicians are wearing masks and gloves, and salespeople are not meeting with homeowners. We're doing everything digitally and doing everything we can to do our part to get over this as quickly as possible.
So for any needs that people have right now, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can always call us, 913-257-5426. But the best way is to go to eastonroofing.com, put your information in, and we'll give you a call.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters.
Hi, this is Matt Llewellyn from 23rd Street Brewery. Thank you, Kansas City, for supporting all the local restaurants during this time of crisis. Starting Thursday, May 21st, the 23rd Street Brewery will be open from 11 to 9 for carry-out and delivery service, and 4 to 9 for dine-in and patio service, if you can believe that. We're open. During this phase, we will adhere to the Douglas County recommendations for restaurants, and please see our website or our Facebook page for details. Most importantly, we want all of our guests and staff to stay safe, and together, we will all get through this.
Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Vision's goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. My friends at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture are among the most accomplished and trusted clinics in the nation. Only one clinic has been rated in the top 5 in all 3 categories of chiropractic care, acupuncture, and rehabilitation, and that clinic is ASFCA. They have locations in Olathe, Overland Park, Prairie Village, Belton, and Lee Summit. Doctors Brad and Christina Woodle and their accomplished team of doctors and therapists will treat you like family, for the simplest of injuries to the most complicated conditions to avoid surgery. Whether you are seeking treatment for an injury or just looking to stay healthy and fit, this is the place for you. And it's been the place for me for almost 2 years now. I've been a strenuous daily exerciser for years, and as time goes on, that takes its toll. But regular appointments at Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture have helped keep me ticking on, and even as the years pile up, their regular care has allowed me to keep to my regimen and feel great. If you want to feel the same, give them a call or visit them at asfca.com/Danny. They accept all insurances and are open Monday through Saturday. And make sure to mention that Danny Clinkscale recommended Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Julie, this is a tremendous work that you've done, your book, Hope Upon Impact, as we noted in the opening. And before we get to your really outstanding and powerful book, why don't you give us a little background of you, how you grew up, where you grew up, and how you got to the point where this life-changing event in your life occurred?
Sure. Thank you very much for speaking with me today. I grew up in central Illinois with my little brother, Anthony, and lived there in Springfield, Illinois, and then in Shelbyville, Illinois. I went off to college at the University of Tulsa, where junior year I met my husband, Robbie. And from there, we traveled for his professional training. We lived in Houston, Texas for 7 years. We lived in Oklahoma City, and we lived in Kansas City. We now reside in Kansas City, and I guess I have always been a lover of words and someone who felt just a sense of joy with written expression. So after the incident with my daughter, I wrote some emails to share with people close to us all that had transpired. And through that process, people said, this is really an amazing story, all the things that occurred here. You should really think about writing a book. So I kept writing, and lo and behold, we have Hope Upon Impact.
You mentioned your brother, and the book opens with you out on a run and hearing the song by Green Day, The Time of Your Life, and it had a tremendous impact on you because he suffered through a cancer scare when he was younger, and you thought you might lose him. And it was an emotional way to open the book that was going to be a very emotional book anyway, but talk about the inspiration of that as a way to start a book.
Well, my brother is so dear to my heart. I just simply adore him. And the year 2000, when he was 19 and he was diagnosed with leukemia, was just a tremendously challenging portion of my life. I feel like my faith wasn't as strong then as it is now, all of these years later. But he always wanted to learn to play the guitar. And the joke with my father said, Julie's husband said that he knew all these kids who flunked out of college because all they did was play the guitar. Like, you're not getting a guitar. And he just basically told my brother no. So when my brother had to endure months of chemotherapy and had low blood counts and couldn't leave the hospital for weeks at a time, he got a guitar, and that's part of what saved his life. Modern medicine and the good Lord and this gift of music. There was a resident. He would come in during his call shifts in the middle of the night when my brother had insomnia. He had all kinds of bone pain, and he just played song after song after song for my brother. And it was a tremendous gift. So just that song was so moving to me. And that song just encapsulates the uncertainty that we felt during that time. And we really did feel, as the lyrics say, that we were just pulled one way in the fork of a road, and we had to just hope for the best and make the most of it. And again, that's what happened with Evelyn's unexpected accident. And you have experienced that with your health in the past. Many people listening, I'm sure, have had moments where they get a phone call, something happens, a diagnosis, and everything in our normal world suddenly changes, and we have to push through that. And it's often incredibly challenging.
I think that you were probably living what you would describe as maybe a blessed life with 4 children and a husband that you loved and a strong faith when that day came around, which was supposed to be a celebratory day of you getting a new member of the family, a puppy, and little did you know that that day would change everything.
Yes. The life is so, can sometimes be so shocking. You were exactly right. It was a beautiful spring day, and we just don't know to round the bend. And I almost think that sometimes that's better because it forces us to simply move through challenges and keep walking, because if we knew we'd have to deal with this and then we would have to deal with this, it would just sometimes overwhelm us. And instead we take it day by day, and during the hardest times, we take it hour by hour or minute by minute, and that's how life goes sometimes.
Well, talk about you unfortunately had to be the person who saw this occur and the first responder when a gigantic tree limb broke and landed on your daughter. Talk about the shocking nature of that aspect that changed things in the mere blink of an eye.
Yes. So it was April 20th, 2018. Beautiful spring day. I was out for a walk to pick her up from a friend's house, and visiting in the yard, she ran up and grabbed her puppy. I walked her puppy with my parents. The next day was going to be First Communion for my youngest, little Vivian, a second grader. So grandparents from multiple states had come to Kansas City. We don't normally have family living in the same city with us. So we were visiting, and we heard a tremendous crack that resonated through the air and focused our attention. And there was a major section of tree that was pivoting from the trunk, crashing down, and it banged into the ground. And I ran to the fence. There was a privacy fence. I was standing in the driveway when it happened, and basically in those moments that I detail in Hope Upon Impact, I feared that my daughter's life was going to be lost as I held her in my arms and looked at her head injury and what looked like neurological injury from the way that her eyes were presenting. And it was, I was in the depths of despair.
I can only imagine, and then you chronicle how the frustrations of a mother wanting to get her daughter, who is in such an incredible state of danger at this point in time, to a hospital. You wish you could get there with a jetpack or something, but you do have to drive, and you didn't feel. I think the urgent, or the ambulance drivers apparently didn't feel the urgency that you did, and I think you patted yourself on the back for not cussing in that particular time. But indeed, I think anybody who reads that can understand the frustration of every second ticking by, you feeling like maybe it's a lost opportunity. Yes,
she clearly had head injury, and we had to get her to the hospital just as fast as possible. And it seemed as though the young driver didn't know the route. So that propelled me as the mom in the front seat of the ambulance into just a state of craziness that finally resulted in me erupting and losing my mind as we almost arrived. But I know the Domen were doing their best to meet the needs of my child, but during the course of that drive, it just felt like no one would get out of our way, and that he didn't know how to get to Children's Mercy, to the trauma center. So it was maddening.
I imagine it was, and obviously, eventually, great work would be done. But as you arrive at the hospital, as you're in this situation, I know you felt so lightheaded you didn't even feel like you could walk at that point in time. But what was your initial thought process, or was there just such a whirlwind that, you, as you said before, you're just taking it one step at a time, 1 minute at a time?
So first and foremost, as she was being loaded into the ambulance when we were back at the yard, she had, just in the course of minutes, her eye went completely swollen, one of them. So I knew that there was bleeding. So I was worried about bleeding within her skull, within her, impacting her brain. So I was worried that she wasn't going to survive the trip to the hospital. So when we finally arrived, you are correct, I was in a full-out panic attack. And by the grace of God, I was able to get it together and plant a kiss on her as she was rolled into the emergency department. And one of the beautiful moments of grace that I experienced that day is that in the yard, as we were leaving, a friend of mine, she works as a pediatric hospitalist and has a direct line into Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City. And she called ahead and assembled a trauma team to be prepared to meet the needs of my daughter with her head trauma. So when I knew that she made it and she was on the stretcher, I had hope in that moment. And then as we entered the room where the trauma team was set up and I looked at them, an entire room was filled with 12 individuals. They were masked, they had on gowns, and they were gloved, and they were looking at me with competent compassion. And I felt as though I was handing them off to her, and I prayed that she would survive and that her injuries would be such that we had a positive outcome, that every single thing was an unknown.
Yeah, I would imagine that. I mean, you're just thinking about survival, but then I imagine you're thinking about how physically she's going to handle it, how mentally she's going to be able to handle it. All those things going through your mind at the same time must, obviously, as I read, were an incredible challenge, but eventually all those boxes would be ticked off, but you sure didn't know it right then.
Correct. We were told by the neurosurgeon that there was a bone shard that could be permeating her brain, which could impact motor function. We didn't know the results of the CT yet to know if she had a lot of brain damage, what type of cognitive function she would have, if her personality would be the same. We didn't know if she would wake up from her anesthesia and after her compressed skull fracture was repaired, if we would have our same girl. We would have taken her in any form, right. Clearly, but it was just so difficult. We look at her now. Evelyn has made this remarkable, just mind-blowing recovery, and I have these moments where I'm so glad that I wrote this book and documented all of this, because to look at her, even though my husband and I lived through it with her, we look at her and we almost can't believe that everything happened. And it's only been 2 years. It's so strange the way our memories sort of smooth over things in life. It's hard to articulate.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And one of the things that I found really fascinating, enjoyable, impactful about your book is it's not as if you wrote it in your voice entirely. You used a whole variety of other people's texts, emails you wrote at the time, emails your father wrote at the time, emails that your husband wrote at the time. And, you know, that really provides a clear and present story. There's no, like, taking your own memory and twisting it or anything else. It provided a personal look from a variety of people's eyes. And what was your decision-making process in doing that? You mentioned before that it was almost the emails and the text that led to the book rather than the other way around. Is that correct?
Yes. I felt like it was so unique that we experienced this random freak accident. Evelyn was sheltering her little puppy from the tree. She had been pushing friends on a web swing that was attached to a limb on that tree when the limb broke. And her very best friend saw the limb strike her skull. So we had that eyewitness. We didn't speak to that little girl until a few days after the accident, when we invited her to visit the hospital once Evelyn had stabilized and was a little bit more alert. My parents were with me. My father and my stepmother were standing behind me in the yard. The homeowner was there with me in the grass, helping me tend to Evelyn. As I said, that friend who assembled the trauma team, she was in the yard. My husband is a physician, an ophthalmologist. Evelyn's eyes presented in such a wild and terrifying and glassy way that he was clipping through all of these differentials for what could be occurring within her brain. And I felt like it was so unique that there were all of these different eyes on the scene, that it would be very interesting, and it would paint a bigger picture to tell the story through those voices, through the lens of these different people. And I'm just so grateful that they were willing to accommodate my request.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
I'm here with Tim Emerson, the owner of Emerson & Company. And Tim, give us an idea of the range of services that you provide from Emerson & Company.
At Emerson & Company, we do credit card processing, payroll services. We do bookkeeping, merchant accounts like point-of-sale systems.
What would you say differentiates you from other companies in the field, and what makes you special?
I think what makes us unique is that we're a small local business making regional decisions on companies. We create a profile for the business and then put it out to our different vendors in a very competitive environment and tailor those needs to the specific business, which usually ends up in a great fit or great result for the company.
And, of course, the idea is to save money, right?
Save money, and actually sometimes I'm surprised where actually a solution that may cost a little bit more ultimately does save money, but we're not conditioned to think like that sometimes.
Emerson & Company. Check them out at emerson-co.com or call them at 816-360-9092.
For many people, a family law case will be one of the most difficult experiences in their life. The law firm of Kenneth McRae will help you through it. Personal and effective help from Ken in concert with you will develop a unique strategy for your unique case. As Ken always says, divorce can be civil law, not civil war. Licensed in Kansas? Visit McRaeLawOffice.com or call 913-972-4765.
Hi, this is Matt Llewellyn from 23rd Street Brewery. Thank you, Kansas City, for supporting all the local restaurants during this time of crisis. Starting Monday, June 1st, the 23rd Street Brewery will be open our regular hours from 11 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. every day of the week. For dine-in and patio service, if you can believe that, we're open. During this phase, we will adhere to the Douglas County recommendations for restaurants, and please see our website or our Facebook page for details. Most importantly, we want all of our guests and staff to stay safe, and together, we will all get through this.
We're visiting with Larry Marshall, former Chiefs defensive back and punt returner and now a Chiefs ambassador. Larry is a former pro football player with the aches and pains that come with that. And moving on in age, as we all are, what do the Canaway CBD products do for you?
It's been a great relief for me. Being a punt and kickoff returner, collisions were a mainstay of my career, and these Canaway products, the salve especially, has really helped me try to get through every day with the aches and pains that I've had over a career of 7+ years in the NFL.
I get similar benefits as well, particularly with my back. Certainly wasn't a football player. What's the best way for our listeners to get more information about the great products themselves?
Well, I'm so enthused about it, Dana. They just contacted me at larrymarshall.canaway.com, and I can give them all the information they need to help them get through the day as well.
Start gaining all the benefits that Larry and I do from the trusted and reliable line of Canaway products. As Larry said, visit larrymarshall.canaway.com and get information on all the great products from Canaway. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. My guest is Julie Overlease. She is the author of Hope Upon Impact. We have a few things in common. We both have written one book. It's both about a medical situation, but the similarities end about there. And maybe one of those is that this is an incredibly strong faith-based book. Each chapter ends with a selected Bible verse. I come from a family of people who are strong in faith. That hasn't rubbed off on me yet, but anyway, that's a different story for a different time. During this particular time, you mentioned that earlier in your life when you were talking about your brother, maybe your faith wasn't in the place that you felt like it would be later in your life. When this occurred, did you feel that? And I know the answer because I read the book, but was your faith in any way shaken during this horrible, or was it only strengthened?
So we are in a wonderful faith community in Kansas City at Curé of Ours Church. And through that organization, I joined a scripture study many years, 8 years ago. And it's multi-generational with women. And through that group, I feel like I have learned and studied scripture in a way that I have previously never done in my life. And it has enriched my faith, definitely. And the group is also filled with some very intelligent and insightful women with rich, diverse experience in life with mothering. And that group was instrumental in helping me. I have had people in my life, neighbors, who have been strong examples of trust in God and of faith. So I feel as though over the journey of my life, people have been woven into my path, and through those interactions, I was made ready for what happened to Evelyn in April of 18. And I was so grateful to God, number one, and then for Children's Mercy Hospital for what they did, for what our friends did for us. We have so many friends who are so selfless. And it was just such a wonderful, wonderful blessing that she survived and that she's thriving, that I really did. I dove deeper into my faith, and I went on a couple of retreats, and I read some more spiritual literature and changed some of my music listening, and started praying the rosary every morning through a podcast by Holy Family School of Faith. And all of these things, I feel, have been really impactful for my life and for my family. So in that way, Evelyn's accident is a blessing in the way that it has enriched my spiritual life.
The book is such a fascinating read, and I encourage everybody to do it. As I mentioned, a miraculous true story of faith, love, and God's goodness wouldn't normally be on my bucket list for reading, but I found, and that's the subtitle of the book. But I really enjoyed it and found the way it was presented inspirational and fascinating. And so we don't want to give away. It's a great read, and it's a very, very in-depth book. But what were a couple of key moments for you when you felt like you were checking off those boxes we talked about before with your daughter?
Well, I think one was definitely post-op when she had to have emergency neurosurgery to repair her skull. And when we first saw her, she was intubated. Most of her head was shaved on the top, and my husband jokes that it looked like a bear had mauled her head. It was hard to see her in that state, and we didn't know when she was going to wake up. So we were just in this waiting mode. We hadn't eaten for a long stretch of hours. Our nerves were just, you can imagine, we were so high strung. We couldn't settle our minds. They were just swimming with questions. And I think one of the most beautiful moments was when it was the middle of the night. It was 2:45 in the morning, and my husband and I curled up on this little makeshift twin-sized sofa in her intensive care unit room, and we heard the nurse greet her, and we opened our eyes and we raced to her, and we could see the recognition in her eye that she knew who we were, and we felt all of this love. And then she had a horrendous stretch of trying to get off the ventilator. But when that was finally removed and she could speak, she just immediately fired off just rapid succession of questions. The culminating one was a question that I'm not really at liberty to share, but it completely sealed the deal that we knew that was our Evelyn. My husband and I looked at each other, and our faces lit up, and we got chills, and the hairs stood up on our arms, and we knew that she was okay. We had so much hope and gratitude.
You knew that she was going to be okay, but the level of okay still was obviously in doubt along the way. But remarkably, and you talk about the incredible medical attention and medical skills that we have. They're being tested right now in other ways, obviously. But this is all a pretty remarkably fast process to the point where it seemed like things were going to be okay.
Yes, it was. That was part of the amazing blessing, because we didn't know if we would be in the hospital for weeks. We just didn't know how any of that would progress. We had countless teams following her and providing excellent care. It's hard to rest in the hospital, for sure, with the steady stream of healthcare providers doing their jobs to make the patient better. But it was quick. I have a wonderful friend, Katie. She wrote a letter to Evelyn that appears in the book. It's one of my favorite chapters because it's so frank and heartfelt and honest. And she spoke about just how heartbreaking it was. Evelyn's accident was on a Friday, and the Sunday that she visited, her daughter is the one who saw the impact of the tree limb. And when they left, they couldn't believe how injured she was, how weak, and it was heartbreaking to them. Just a few days later, they came back to the hospital, and she had showered, and I had braided her hair, and she was wearing one of her own shirts, and they said that it felt like it was a different person altogether. When she came out of surgery, she had no left side mobility of her extremities, and we didn't know how long that would last. We didn't know what it would look like going forward. So yes, things clipped along, and even from there, by the time that she was discharged, she was in the hospital for a stretch, and upon discharge, when we got home, I about lost my mind because I looked and she was on the staircase. She had a boot. She had a massive foot laceration as well, so she had a protective boot. And she was carrying a radio in one hand and something else in the other hand, and she's going down. I'm like, oh my gosh, Evelyn, I'm going to have to put you in a helmet. You cannot navigate the stairs. You just got out of the hospital with neurosurgery, please. So she's a Spitfire, and that serves her well. And she and I, we have some things in common, which I don't know if you have a child with whom you have a lot in common. Sometimes that's challenging.
Right. I can. You see yourself, you're the best, the worst, whatever, at the same time. But then, you really get a clean bill of health by May 10th, or around Mother's Day. What an incredible Mother's Day gift. Now, she would still go through some processes of, having lapses as far as relearning things in her mind. But generally, your hope upon impact came very quickly, and it came almost in the form of a Mother's Day present.
It did. It was wonderful that I think that for Evelyn, it felt like a much lengthier endeavor. She had a moderate to severe traumatic brain injury, which can take 6 to 12 months to heal. So she had to sit out of contact sports, and we really used caution to prevent a secondary concussion and the complications that could result, and set back her recovery from that. So by the time a year had passed, when she had her follow-up, we were just ecstatic that things had progressed as they had, and that she was still bright, and that her bone had fused as one would hope. All the things that one would hope to experience were her reality.
Absolutely, and one of the things that, obviously was kind of an ironic thing for me is that she was dubbed Trauma, Massachusetts. That was her name. I'm from Massachusetts, so when I read that,
Yes.
it kind of connected with me. But and eventually, a prognosis that maybe she wasn't going to be able to play contact sports was altered, and right now, at this point in time, she pretty much is kind of back to where she was, right?
Yes, she is. And the other thing that's neat about that is that my publisher, Paraclete Press, is on Cape Cod in Massachusetts. So when that just seemed like another little point to make us smile about Evelyn's code name as a trauma patient arriving by ambulance, and then the eventual location of Paraclete Press. She is a healthy girl. She played tennis as physical therapy when she went back to school. She chose not to resume soccer, which was fine with me. That sport has the highest incidence of concussion in female sports.
Right.
She did play basketball with her team, and she is actually trying something brand new. She made the cheerleading squad for her upcoming high school Notre Dame to sign on. So she's looking forward to that. She has an older sister who will be a senior there when Evelyn starts in the fall as a freshman.
Could you just reflect a little bit on what it was like for the rest of your family? One of the things I said that we have in common is about health situations and so on. First, starting with you, but then going to your husband and her sisters. I think it's almost more difficult when it's not you and it's the health situation. You're helpless. When I had cancer, it was about me, and I could just go about it and handle it myself. I don't know what it would be like to have a daughter who had cancer or something like that. That seems to me like it would almost be worse. But what kind of support, reflection, impact did it have as far as your family life was concerned?
So my husband and I have had a lot of long walks during this quarantine period. And we were recently talking about how we have these overwhelming, he talked about how strong the physical reaction of fear of something else happening to harm one of our children is sometimes. And that's something that is difficult to work through, especially with teenagers. They're trying to spread their wings and they want independence and they want privileges. And obviously, we have our children and we want to launch them into the world, and it's a process of giving them opportunities and trusting them. But that is probably our biggest challenge as a result of this. I mean, we know that it can be a beautiful day and everything is wonderful in the world, and then crack, everything changes. And I do have the confidence, both from the experience with my brother and from my parents getting divorced when I was a little girl, and from this with Evelyn. We all experience challenges in life. I feel like whatever comes, I will get through it with difficulty, no doubt. But fear is a hard one for us. Parental fear is a hard one for us to overcome. I think my oldest daughter, Evelyn is the second daughter. We have 4 children, 1 son.
1 son, that's right.
And I think that she was angry and wondered kind of, why do bad things happen to good people? Why did this have to happen? And through working on that and involvement in a youth group, her faith has really deepened, and she has peace with it, and she sees that there are good things that can come from suffering. And the little ones, I think that for my youngest, she's 10 now, I think that she sees us kiss each other goodbye when we part, and she has this little loss of innocence because of what happened. I think she struggled after the accident with worrying that something would happen to her mom or dad. And that's hard to see in a little child. I think that Evelyn's brother, Henry, is, to his benefit, a very carefree guy, and not much ruffles him, for better or worse. But he's going strong.
And speaking of going strong, I found it quite humorous that you said that if your daughter was a rapper, you'd call her Tenacious E. And that was funny to me. In reading the book, it didn't strike me that you were probably the greatest aficionado of rap, but you picked a great rap name, that's for sure. And
Thank you.
And I'm sure that tenacity stood her in good stead. And it strikes me also in reading it that maybe that Tenacious E label is part of what you see as the similarities in you and your daughter. Is that correct?
I have been accused of being hard-headed by my beloved spouse. So I can own that. I see it as determination and perseverance. Yes, we're strong-willed.
And being strong-willed and having gone through this particular situation, an incredible life-changing situation, Evelyn, what is her outlook on life, do you feel like now? You mentioned it, and you've been so open and personal about some of these impacts of your younger daughter having to struggle with that and the potential loss. And Evelyn, with her tenacious attitude, seems very well suited to taking on any challenges that might face her now.
She is. It makes me smile when you ask this because throughout the process, she kept saying, "Mom, I'm fine." She just thought I was being pedantic. Mm-hmm. There was nothing wrong. Nothing really bad happened. She was fine. And she had post-traumatic amnesia, so she didn't remember the accident. She didn't remember the intensive care unit. All of that traumatic stretch is not a part of her memory. So the people around her filled her in, and she has built the story of it basically through all of these different people. But she's fine. She feels capable and just positive and faith-filled. She's just a wonderful girl with a bright future.
This book was only published last month, and I'm sure you have all kinds of great plans for it, and I'm glad to be the tiniest part of those plans. I know when I used to do book presentations, and I still do occasionally, but I did a whole lot of them at first, I really just used to, it was kind of a joke, but it wasn't really. It was I always said, since I survived, it really was good that I got cancer. If I didn't have cancer, I wouldn't have taken the trip. If I didn't take the trip, I wouldn't have wrote the book. If I hadn't wrote the book, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you. It seems like you've got a tremendous opportunity to really help a lot of people out who have to go through situations like this, and you certainly have the vehicle in this incredible book to do so.
Thank you so much. You are right. I unfortunately launched a book during a world pandemic, so my author events have been canceled, so I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share with your listeners today about Hope Upon Impact. But people have been writing me letters and contacting me through social media and sharing what the book has meant to them, and it's so humbling, and my heart is just filled with gratitude that they take the time to share that with me. I think that if people have a takeaway from the book, it's to hold on to hope, and that if we see someone who's going through a hard time, to just show up for them in whatever way we're able, to be a little bit of help. And I think that even in the midst of really hard times, we are still able to find moments of joy and to see the good and to work through that suffering.
We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klingscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new. This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors like the law offices of Kenneth McRae, developing a unique strategy for your family law case. Divorce can be civil law, not civil war.